Welcome to the J.D. Levy and Associates Calibration Point Podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share.
I want to welcome everyone to this month's episode of the Calibration Point Podcast. Super excited, as we've been mentioning, to have Senator John Crane, founder of JBC Leadership Strategies, back with us talking about this equation of leadership growth. And today we get to unpack the where of leadership. And as we go forward with this, we've already kind of set the table on looking at the why, the where, the who, and the how of leadership, and this process of growth that you've lived out, that you've now really just brought together so people can put their hands around it, both in your personal life, but also then as you're helping other leaders to grow. So thank you again, John, for coming on and sharing, and always appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be back with you, and love doing this series with you and talking about leadership.
Well, me too. It's so needed, and I mean, as we know, it's kind of like everything else that just gets co-opted in kind of general society, right? Leadership gets shifted into being this Western image of power and authority, and you understand that clearly with all of your expertise and experiences. So let's just maybe start back into that. We talk about moving to this next step of the piece, so maybe help us understand how this fits in the puzzle, and we can just unpack what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. I know as we've laid out this kind of sequence, we first talked about the why and understanding that deeper that purpose that catalyzes everything that we do. But it works hand in hand and in conjunction with the where of leadership. So the fundamental question that people are asking, either subliminally or overtly, is where are we going? If you're leading us, where are we going? Where are you taking us? So it's a question that leaders should be asking and answering as well, so that they can provide clarity. And for me, one of the contexts in which this really came to the forefront was as a senator. We'd be sitting in all these key meetings talking about public policy and where are we trying to take our state and all of that. And I described the legislative process as you're kind of a pinball in a pinball machine, right? You're just banging around one topic to the next. You barely have enough time to really dig deep because the next avalanche of topics is coming your way. So you're just trying to move quickly and make the best decisions. And inevitably, I began to feel myself, and I began to sense, it was verbalized by colleagues, where are we going
Right.
with education policy, or where are we going with jobs and workforce development, or where are we going with tech in our state, or agriculture, or whatever it is. So these big kind of public policy areas, do we have a path forward so that all these specific bills and things that we're trying to pass are in conjunction with the general mission of where we're going? And it's the same thing, whether you are a business leader, whether you are a faith leader, or you're running a nonprofit, or whatever your particular context is, the question is still the same. If you are leading, then where are you going? Because you have to be clear on where that target is. You might not hit the center of the target, but at least you've got a clear direction on where you're trying to go. And then, of course, that sets the stage for the next key piece, which is, am I able to communicate the where clearly with my people or my various constituencies that are depending on my leadership?
So how does the where play out in your experience? I mean, it seems that there could be a number of levels when someone thinks about where are we going. Is that as a personal leader, kind of my own personal compass? Is that a movement that I'm leading people into something bigger than themselves? How do I navigate that table in a sense?
Yeah. So my answer would be yes. That it's all of those things, right? It's multi-layered. So back to this idea of why, right? What is driving me? What is there an ultimate why drives my life? Is there a contextual why? Like what are we trying to accomplish? Purpose questions and things like that. It's the same thing with where because they fit together. And so, for example, in a contextual environment, if you're talking about politics and it's like, okay, where are we trying to go? Well, it depends on what area of public policy we're talking about. It looks a little different in agriculture than it does in workforce and business
Right.
related issues. But if you're a church and you're saying, okay, where are we trying to go? If we're trying to increase our impact in the community, what does that look like? If we're trying to serve the poor in our community, what does that actually look like practically? Do we do this as a solo venture? Do we partner with other churches and nonprofits to try to reach the poor in our community? So you're getting very pragmatic. Same thing in business. Where are we trying to go? Well, it depends on what you're doing. Are you offering goods and or services? Are you offering something that is contextual to a particular area of business? So you have to be clear about that, just as, say, a coach would on the team.
Right.
But it's also related to where am I going as a leader?
Okay.
What is my larger mission in life? So we'll start with politics and we'll touch on coaching. In my
Okay.
world, right, my job was to be the best senator I could be in the state of Indiana. And we can unpack what we mean by best senator you can be. But there's a couple big areas. One, law and public policy. Are we making good law for our citizens? And number two, am I serving the citizens that I'm called to represent in that role? And so
Okay.
that's the job. But within that, then it's okay, what is my role in life as a person of faith who tries imperfectly, mind you, but tries to live out my Christian faith consistently? My goal, as I told our chaplain very early in my career, I'm not actually here to be a senator. I told him, I said, I'm here to be a catalyst for redemptive good in the political arena. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was my personal mission, to be a catalyst for redemptive good in the political arena. He said, wow, that's interesting. Unpack that. And it gave me an opportunity to talk about my larger mission. The secondary goal I told him was I'm also here to try to redeem the reputation of the politician if that's possible. Right. So every day when I'm walking into our Capitol, I am, as a person of faith and prayer, praying the same prayer every day to get my mind right, my heart right, get centered into what it is that I'm called to do. And that largely surrounded being able to be wise in the decisions that we make and pursue the path as hard as it might be, have the courage to make the right call, but also how I interact with people. Am I thoughtful in how I think and then how I act and interact? So that's what guided me. But it's the same thing in coaching. If I'm a basketball coach, then what's the goal? The goal is to win the last game of the season, the championship. Okay,
Right.
great. Let's do it. Let's put the practice in. Let's put the reps in. Let's weight lift. Let's do all the stuff. But as a coach, if we win the championship and all my young men are terrible examples of what character and integrity and personal
Right.
responsibility are, then have I actually won or not?
Right.
I would argue I've actually lost. I can have as many championship rings on my fingers as I want, but I've actually
Yep.
lost the larger mission. And so that's how you begin to integrate that. If you're working in the faith space, that integration is much more obvious and at the forefront because the church and Christian and other faith communities are talking about the big issues, right? That existential philosophical
Yep.
space. But it all integrates together based on the worldview that we have, which guides us on the path through life.
So if you think about leadership then as kind of in like a bigger context of how do I like catalyze, mobilize, encourage people to do something and become something bigger than themselves. And if I as a leader am whatever my focus is, what I hear you saying is that my ability to do that it often will then hinge on two things. Do people understand where I'm going as an individual leader? Can they align behind that, whatever my philosophy is, my core beliefs, and they're driving that? And then secondarily, have I also communicated well to them what that other side of the bridge looks like on whatever the issue is that I'm mobilizing them towards. Um,
Yes. Yes, that's right. I would start even before that. And
okay.
that is, am I clear on
Mm,
where I'm going first, right?
gotcha.
Do I have clarity in terms of where I'm trying to go as a leader in my life and being on mission in life,
Yeah.
but also within my particular context? And then to the points that you made, are my people clear? Have I communicated that well?
That to them.
And are they clear on where we're trying to go? I'm reminded of a quote from the book On Mission by John Buford and Sean Georges that says, ensuring every member of the team has mission clarity is a critical responsibility of every leader, right?
Mm,
Do my people have mission clarity?
clarity. Yep.
And a big piece of that is the communication piece, right?
Yeah.
But it also starts with, how do I treat my people? You talked earlier in this conversation about different models of leadership, and it's very easy in the political space, in the business space, even in the church space, for this kind of dominant alpha male
Yep.
type. I'm the leader. Everybody should listen to me. I'm always going to be the smartest person in the
Yep.
room. Instead of, my often adage is that the smartest person in the room is the one that surrounds themselves with smarter people in the room, right? That I recognize that there are people that have assets that if I bring them together, get the right people on the bus, as Jim Collins says, get them in the right
Yep.
seats, then we collectively can do much more exponentially than we could individually. So I've got to approach my people with a high view of people as
Yep.
contributing members who can be empowered and trusted to do good work well. And then I've got to be able to communicate clear direction on, here's the target, here's how we're trying to get there. Do you have input on what we should or shouldn't do to try to achieve that goal? And we can sit here and talk about it in theory. Everybody knows that that's true. This isn't rocket science. It's the actual execution of the communication piece that
Right.
becomes a major stumbling block for so many
Yep.
organizations.
Yep. I mean, to your point, a lot of the near West kind of Hollywood models of leadership, Gandhi would never pass the bar for.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. That's right. Neither would Mother Teresa.
right. Absolutely.
Of course, they're
Yeah.
both in India. It's an
Yep. That's
Eastern
right.
versus Western mentality, and I think
Yeah.
we have embraced that. And I think what creates, I believe, an unintentional stumbling block in our understanding of leadership is we've seen it be successful, right? Like
Yep.
enough people that achieve some version of quote unquote the American dream by leveraging that model of leadership and go, oh, that's what I want, as opposed to, understand, which we'll never understand. But what was the collateral damage for you to climb that mountain,
Yep.
right? Like, what was the fallout for your journey on terms of the people, missed opportunities, all these kinds of things? We just see the outcome and, connect point A to point B,
Yep.
not realizing that there's a lot in between.
And to that point, those are the most visible leaders and examples. So then we end up myopically thinking that, well, that must be what it is.
That's right.
Uh,
That's exactly right. And so
yeah.
the key thing in this to me is, as we've said, you've got to be able to lead yourself well, right? Like in the conversation that's coming up about the who of leadership, there's the two entities. Who is myself as the one person in that, and then the other who is the people, right? Well, have I learned to lead myself well? That's where it all starts. That's why this where component starts with myself. Am I
Right.
clear about where I'm going first? Do I have what I call an on mission mentality? And
Yep.
every single one of us has a worldview. Whether or not that worldview is aligned with Christianity or some other
Right. Some
philosophy
other
of
worldview.
life,
Right.
we each have one. And the challenge for every leader is to say, is my worldview, is my understanding of the world in line with the reality of the world as it is, as opposed to the world as I assume it to be? And lining that up puts us in a position to be able to make greater strides towards achieving what it is we're trying to achieve and bring whatever
Yep.
good it is that we're trying to bring. So if I understand that, and then I go, okay, every day is an opportunity for me to try to help people find the good path to the truly good life. That's how I
Yep.
think of it. Like every day. And it's awesome. Like there is nothing greater for me to do. I love it. Every day is that opportunity because I have this on mission mindset. So every person I interact with, every podcast that I record, every speech that I give is an opportunity to continue to be on mission. And then within those contexts, specific things, my business, or when I was in the Senate, or wherever people are, then how does my mission for that context or that team or that organization align with how do I help it align with the good path to the truly good life?
Yeah. No,
That's
that's
where it
good.
begins to marry together, and you bring those two contexts together, hopefully in a cohesive whole.
Yeah. I think that's a great summary and really sets up for our next segment as well on how it fits into this. And I would just add maybe in close one additional thing because you brought up a really important point, and that is worldview. How do I answer origin, meaning, morality, and destiny? Whatever worldview that is, I would just say for listeners, I think one of the great gut checks of your worldview is that worldview big enough to encompass what reality actually is?
Exactly.
As we know, because a lot of worldviews really aren't. And that plays into leadership, right? If I'm
Absolutely.
operating in a worldview that isn't big enough to encompass true reality, it's be difficult for me to achieve real outcomes.
Well, and I'll give you one quick example because this shows up in politics all the time. One of the things
Yeah.
that I was pleasantly surprised by, and I discovered to my own detriment, is how jaundiced a view I had when I came in, because I had that same view of kind of they're all a bunch of bums, and that's why I'm here. I'm going to be the better politician. Da, da, da. I came to discover that the elected officials are actually really good-hearted people. They're actually very smart. And on both sides of the aisle, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, they're all really solid people. Nobody gets into it and go, I'm going to try to make life miserable for my constituents, right? You're trying to do the right thing. And we had actually a lot of shared values, but where we had our most passionate debates was on the right path. Everybody's coming
Mm,
in to try to do the right thing.
yep.
But the question is, okay, what is the right thing? And that's where you get into all these debates. So it shows up in things like, well, you can't legislate morality. As I've explained to colleagues and to constituents, the entire job of the elected official as a lawmaker is to make law. So it isn't about whether or not you can legislate morality. That's the job. You legislate what's right, what's wrong, where the line
Right.
is. It's whose morality are you going to legislate?
Yeah.
And that's the difference. That's a worldview question to your point
Yeah.
about,
That's really good.
values and truth and ethics. Well, that shows up everywhere, either
Right.
explicitly or implicitly when we're saying as leaders, where is the right path forward? And you get into lots of debate about what the right path is, but that's the challenge is to say, we're trying to pursue that path so we can hit our targets, meet our goals, make people's lives better. And that's why all of this stuff is integrated in that worldview context. But you're exactly right. Your worldview has got to be big enough to be able to navigate all that.
To bring it together. Yeah. And that's what I, like about your leadership process we're working through is it forces it forces good leadership mobilization questions, but it also forces DNA questions
That's right.
that I have to understand, and especially as we
That's
get
right.
further into this process. Yeah, that's
Yep.
excellent, and it's a great summary. I mean, it's a really good stepping point for people as we, kind of eyes wide open and get ready for the next segment that will keep building off of this. So I appreciate your time, and for listeners, stay tuned because again, we're walking through this whole process in coming episodes. So John, always looking forward to the next time we get to then go to the next part of your equation, and so appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I look forward to being back with you again.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point Podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.